So let's say we have a class with certain members. So if you have a class, how do you access the members of a class? In order to access the members of a class, you need to define a variable for this class. So in order to define a variable, take the class name, followed by the variable name for the class, create an instance of the class by using the new keyword, new class name, right? So now you have created an instance. This is called as creating an instance of a class or instantiating a class. When you create an instance of a class, memory is allocated for the variables that are defined in the class. So this A1 gets a memory on what is called as a stack. When you say new A memory is allocated for these variables on the heap memory, and this A1 would be pointing to this heap memory. Okay? So this particular variable A1, which is of type A, is called as an object or an instance variable of a class. Now using this instance variable, then we access the members of the class. It could be a variable or it could be a method. Likewise. So this is how we access the members of a class. Now apart from the variables and the methods that you define in a class, you also have something called as constructors in a class. Constructors always have a same name as the class name, and they do not have a return type, unlike a method. Why do we need to write the constructor? Now constructors are written generally to initialize the members of the class or do something which is at that particular instance when you need to create an object of a class. Okay? So right now we do not have a constructor in a class. When you don't write a constructor in a class, the compiler will insert what is known as a default constructor. A default constructor is a constructor which does not take any parameter or argument. The compiler will insert a constructor likewise, as if it's almost a do-nothing constructor. So this particular constructor is the default constructor, as there are no arguments being passed here. You can write your own constructors in a class. You can pass parameters to those constructors. For example, we might write a constructor like this. In this case, we have a constructor which takes a int parameter, a single parameter. Now when we write a constructor in a class, then the compiler will no longer insert the default constructor. So for this particular class, we no longer have a default constructor, we just have a parameterized constructor. So in order to create an instance of the class A, now since there is only one constructor available, you need to create an instance by passing the int parameter. Because when does a constructor get executed? The constructor gets executed every time you create an instance, when you say new. So constructors are executed when you create an instance of a class. They are used to initialize the members of a class, and they do not have a return type. If suppose you were to put some return type here, this is no longer a constructor, it's like any other method. Okay? You can have any number of constructors in a class. So now there are two ways of creating an instance of this class. Either by passing an int value while you are creating an instance, or by passing an int comma the character value. So depending on the type of parameters that you are passing, when you create an instance of a class, the appropriate constructor will be called.